Hello and welcome to a new episode of High Tech Low Code Podcast. Today you're joined again by the founder and chair of Tech Women Today, Cecilia Harvey, and by the co-founder of Candidate X, Wong. In the past, we had the pleasure of having these guests where we approached the topics of women in tech and how technology is tackling the problem of diversity and inclusion in recruitment. And on this episode, we plan to explore these topics with the help of our distinguished guests. Cecilia, let me start by saying how much we appreciate you having accepted our invitation again. How have you been?
Oh, wonderful. Getting ready for Christmas, so doing good.
Oh yes, those festivities. Again, thank you for giving us this opportunity. And before we focus on Man, I would like to ask you if you could introduce yourself to the listeners who picked up our podcast at a later episode.
Yeah, so I'm Cecilia Harvey. In addition to being the founder of Tech Women Today, I'm also the CEO of Hyve Dynamics, which is a sensor technology company. And with Tech Women Today, it's not just a platform to help women that actually work in technology, but also a platform to help non-technical female entrepreneurs understand how they can leverage technology in order to grow and scale their businesses. And another sort of project that has recently kicked off is something called Avoiding Career Krakatoa, where it's providing online content and services to really help people navigate those difficult points within their career. So I'm really excited about that. And I think that'll help a lot of people, especially with the times that we've been having recently.
All right. Man, shifting our focus to you. Thank you very much for also having accepted our invitation again. How have you been doing since we last spoke?
I'm well, Mario. Thanks for asking. And it's a pleasure to be here again and to meet yourself as well, Cecilia.
Wonderful. Good meeting you. Yeah.
Let me say this. We really value giving us this opportunity for another chat. And as before, I would like to ask if you could introduce yourself, yet again, for those listeners who picked up our podcast at a later episode.
Yeah, sure thing. So I'm Wong, one of the co-founders of Candidate X. We're an equality-led community, and we have a simple mission, really, to accelerate inclusion in the workplace, just through enabling a true sense of belonging where every voice is heard.
Kicking off after introductions, last time we spoke with Cecilia, we touched the subject of Tech Women Today and listened to the advice of women venturing into the tech world. This time, I would like to ask the same, but to Man, so that he could give us his point of view, considering his recruitment background. So Man, what would be your advice?
Yeah, sure. A number of things sort of spring to mind. I think the word tech is quite broad in this context, but I'll try and answer as best as I can. But in general, I think anyone who is looking to get into work at this moment as a whole, or change industry, or venture into something new such as tech, my advice would always be to look for a mentor. And this can be more than just emulation purposes. You know, as a co-founder, personally, I've benefited incredibly from individuals who kind of occupy this type of role for me in my work. You know, someone I can refer to, bounce ideas, and ultimately grow and learn from. You know, an objective perspective, I guess, that they can provide without any emotion, which is so important when trying to make really crucial decisions that are personal to you in your career. You know, that kind of sage advice that you can rely on, and maybe someone who really knows the field, obviously has contacts and a network that can be a huge asset. And I recognize this is obviously easier said than done and requires a great deal of effort and commitment. But my general advice would be to my younger self, you know, would have been find a mentor early and find someone that you can trust and sort of leverage on.
That's interesting. I never thought about the approach to a mentor. That's actually pretty good.
Yeah, I find and it doesn't necessarily have to be someone who's more seasoned in the role, for instance. I know we're talking about specifically the context of getting into tech, so ideally you want to find a mentor that may be already in that space. But you know, the whole concept around reverse mentoring is so key as well. There's so many new skills out there that the younger generations or the people that have just come into work can really impart into us. I've seen some really interesting case studies over at Virgin Media, where the CEO took some social media reverse mentoring from one of their from one of his employees. So it's all about willingness and open, and anything that encourages communication and collaboration, I think gets a big thumbs up from me, certainly.
You mentioned reverse mentoring. Sorry, I'm gonna flag my ignorance on this. Well, what's that?
Not at all. So that's purely the concept around I think whoever you are in your position in an organization, whether you're senior, you're a manager, a director, or even the founder, you can always learn. And if you have that as a mindset, that is fantastic. And you can learn pretty much of anybody. I get reverse mentored by my 5-year-old child. She's learning more about the planets and the solar system than I can remember, and she's telling me things about dwarf planets and things like that. So you take that concept into work, where as businesses, we're so globalized now with the internet and how it's so digitally enabled. We can be interacting with all types of people of all demographics, of all age groups. So it's very important to keep your mind open. So reverse mentoring has a place there where you are able to learn from people maybe in their earlier careers that have, I guess, specialisms or insight into certain aspects that you simply don't know. So for instance, if you want to leverage your social media like TikTok, and I'm 40 years old, I don't know enough about that at all as a platform, but I'm eager to learn. And I recognize the power of something like that. I'm using this anecdotally, obviously, and there are other people, with a specific demographic group that have got a lot of expertise in these areas. So it's reverse mentoring is about being open-minded and enabling you to ensure that actually everybody has some advice that's got value and merit that you can learn from.
I see. That is very interesting. Be open to any experience. Yes.
Absolutely, yeah.
Cecilia, do you reckon technology has helped us in any way on this topic?
Yes, I think so. In that when I think of just today and how there are so many online platforms, there is so much content out there where I think it really has helped us to expand the definition of what it means to be somebody working in tech. So it's not just somebody that's a coder. It's not just somebody that's a programmer. You could be somebody who has a wide range of creative skills and work in technology, as a designer, as a business analyst, as a program manager, even more non-technical roles. And I think that that's something that contributes to greater diversity within the area of technology. I think also because we have such great platforms and content out there, you're able to see people that have had similar experiences as you, that have similar backgrounds of you, that are in roles that ultimately you want to be in. So I think we have better examples of role models. And when I say role models, it's not necessarily sort of this idol or this, this person of perfection, but it's really somebody that you can appreciate or learn certain behaviors or certain values or how they've handled certain situations throughout their career or their journey that you can take on board yourself. So I think because we're able to see more of these types of role models, because we're able to have content and hear people's stories and see the range of opportunities out there, I think that that's really helped to contribute to better diversity, and that's how tech has helped to do that. And that's one of the things that I love about technology is that, one, through it helps to show that we're more alike than we are different, when we are able to hear people's stories, when we are able to have platforms where that's easier to share across. And then also, I think within tech, we're seeing the broad range of possibilities and career opportunities and the journeys that people have taken just from an industry perspective.
It's quite interesting. I can see all the possibilities on this, but do you reckon that we are still limited in some way, shape, or form, and we must overcome those limitations still with technology?
I think that within any industry, there's always room for progress, right? But I think I think we have made a lot of progress over the years.
Right. Well, that is interesting. Looking at this from the point of view of roles in leadership, so you think the same still applies? And I open this question for both of you, no one specific.
In terms of what, Maro? In terms of leadership, how technology has enabled things?
Yes.
I think just to add on, I mean, Cecilia made some great points there. Technology is an interesting, like particularly in where we find ourselves at the moment. We've seen rapid innovation in a very short period of time. So we understand the possibilities and the scalable impacts, positive and negative, that technology can create. I think it's just important to understand and appreciate that technology, whilst important, and holds a significant space in how we as people sort of interact with each other, learn from each other, etc., it and rightly should hold a seminal pedestal. It shouldn't remove the human aspects of it. In another time, in a different space, obviously we'd be encouraged to meet each other and engage and all that sort of good stuff. But technology, for instance, through mediums like Medium, where you can learn things and understand experiences and read blogs about what people are doing, and that's all really key and important. But it's then how do you manifest that into an organization? If you just hold that information and kind of go, right, I've learned this new process and I'm now going to do my job in a certain way, but you're not collaborating, you're not interacting with people, you're not actually dispersing that learned information, I think you can be restricted in that sort of sense. And that's the same for leadership. Leaders should be using technology in a certain way, for instance, to understand more about what they can do to do their jobs better. Particularly in this particular time that we find ourselves in, they have a very, very important, crucial role. They can shape things in a much profound way, and technology should be viewed really as an enabler for this individual. It should never be used as something as a crutch almost that can be seen to replace your qualities as a leader or what your duty should be. That's kind of my sort of thinking around that.
Yeah, I think that from a leadership perspective, I mean, if you would have told me, 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, that I'd be the CEO of a technology company, I would tell you you're absolutely crazy. But I no, you don't know what you talk, please, no way. And definitely, if you told me when I was a child growing up that I would even be working in tech, I'd say you're absolutely crazy. But I think that one, in terms of being a leader within tech, I think that it gets down to is that we need more stronger leaders in technology, because it is such an area that has so much impact on people's lives. So you need that strong leadership where not only within your organization, you're nurturing these amazing minds and these amazing people in order to produce things that are going to ultimately impact the broader community. But also just in general, because there is such a spotlight on tech right now, we need people that are leading with integrity. We need people that are thinking in terms of how to responsibly develop their tech. So I think that one, from a leadership perspective within tech, those roles are becoming even more and more important because there is such a spotlight on them. When I think of being a leader in tech, I think that I'm so blessed every day just to work in an organization where, within an industry where you learn so much from the people that you work with. How many industries where you've been in it for 20 years and you're still learning, and you're still able to, you're learning from people that, have less years of work experience than you, where you feel an appreciation for working with those individuals and their skill sets that they bring to the table, where, I feel like I learned from them, and I just appreciate them. So I think that there's not many industries where you can do that, where as a leader, you're still learning from those people that you're leading, and they're helping you to be a better leader. So from that perspective, I think that tech is definitely interesting, and from the leadership perspective.
Focusing on the IT talent gap, even before the digital revolution that we are experiencing now, there was a lack of available people to fill in the ranks of IT. From your point of view, what is the best way to deal with this?
I've always said pipeline development was just in general, like just how you not only deal with a talent gap, but really foster talent where going forward, they're going to be able to go on to pursue leadership opportunities of leadership, but also they'll be able to sustain themselves in those positions of leadership and be successful. I think that programs where we're able to expose people to the range of different opportunities within tech and really develop them along the way in order to be great leaders is important, where they're getting that training so that they develop that confidence, they develop that well-rounded skill set that will allow them to not only be successful within their own careers, but also contribute towards helping others that are coming along the way. I think that that's quite key in terms of developing a pipeline of talent and nurturing that talent as they're going through that pipeline to pursue more senior positions throughout their careers. So that's one. And I think that also having more role models and people seeing more role models is very important, because it'll let people know that, one, this is even a possibility for them. I think that when you see it, you're able to believe that it's something that's achievable for you. That's what I had. Until I saw another, Black female in a role working in banking, that's when something just clicked, where it's like, I can do this. Because before then, I didn't even know that was a possibility, just in general as a career. But then when you see somebody that's had a similar experience as you, when you see somebody that has had a similar journey as you, and they've done it, all of a sudden, there's no reason, there's no barriers, there's no obstacles. Those voices in your head go away in terms of, can I even do this? Yeah, you can do it. So I think that having those role models and seeing those role models and hearing those stories is so key.
What about from your point of view, man?
I mean, I totally agree with what Cecilia said there. It's we in the work that I do, we find things that Cecilia is sort of inferring there is a massive barrier. Self-selection, this idea of self-selection, where seeing is believing is so powerful, because we are conditioned in such a way from such an early age with so many different biases from parents, teachers, work colleagues, friends, etc., that it shapes your mindset to such an extent where it can become limiting in certain aspects when it comes to your career. I've met so many individuals that struggle with this whole idea of being themselves because they feel it's inhibiting, and when they actually come to look for new roles, etc. I mean, I always talk about this one young lady that I met at an event. She was a young Black lady. She was in the LGBT community. She had white dreadlocks. It's really, really, really cool. And she was a Python developer. And she wanted to work with complex data sets, and I talked to her about the ideas of financial services, obviously insurance and all that good stuff, and she literally laughed at me. She got a phone out, Google image, banking, finance, insurance, found a load of images where it's men in white men in suits, etc. And she was like, I'm never going to be welcome there. I'm not accepted. And the irony is, when you talk to people in these organizations, that's who they want. They want this specific demographic because they want a diversity now. But she has this inhibiting factor here because she's grown up in a mold where that's not been encouraged, and that's not the way it is or allowed, or etc. So that thing should never be underestimated, and it is a huge problem when you're filling the IT talent gap, as you called it. More from a, I guess, practical perspective. There's a lot of HR work obviously going around talent gap analysis, skills hierarchy mapping to affect that pipelining issue. I think Cecilia touched upon that issue as quite profound as well. The fundamental thing that always occurs is that people will say to you, there's not enough women in these roles, or there's not enough people from the Black community can fill these jobs, or disability, LGBTQ. That's simply not true. People don't understand what's available. It's whether you can engage with them. It's whether they actually want to work for you. And if they don't want to work for you, do you know why they don't want to work for you? And until you actually have the curiosity for those answers, you won't begin to make reasonable impact on your pipelining. As someone who's been in the recruitment industry for the last 15, 20 years, the often default thing that clients will say to me is, right, I need a woman in my team. They outsource that element. They outsource those elements to you, and it's profoundly the wrong way, because even if I was able to secure someone who's female to join a specific team, they start in January. I don't know if they're going to be there in June, because you end up quotas are extremely dangerous in those areas when you're not thinking about it in a thorough way. So that has a big impact on pipelining. Another way, I guess, to address some of these IT talent gap side is not to commoditize or put barriers up in processes and specialist networks. Recruiters, I mean, I know recruiters have a bad rap, right? And I'm not here trying to stand on my soapbox trying to defend us. Let's be clear, because there are some really bad ones out there. But equally, there are some really exceptionally good and skilled ones that are professional, honest, trustworthy, and as hard as it is to believe. And they're very good. And the problem is what's happening at the moment, their networks have been commoditized, their value is being commoditized. And I think we do need to appreciate there are people out there that can do more and can provide more for you from a market understanding perspective, rather than just sending CVs through and making it a very transactional piece. We talk about human as assets, whereas it should be inferred as capital. Human capital is important to understand. The people that come in here have value to you, and the people that are supplying that value to you shouldn't be ignored. And when advice is good advice and talent mapping and all that good stuff, and they give you that market understanding, that shouldn't be sort of cast away and not sort of appreciated on. And these are the things that I can see that can help on talent mapping. And I guess the final elements of this should be, technology, as we keep centralizing back to, should enable suppliers or that candidate journey to be improved. And we should absolutely be investing in these things to ensure that people come in, they have a great journey, they're heard, they're fed back in the right way, it's done in a timely manner. Too often you see candidates interview a role or send CVs through, and there's a big gap of time before they hear anything. I'm sure we've all experienced it ourselves as well. And this could be internal as well as external when you're applying to an external company. Technology should be able to enable those things. But notwithstanding, they shouldn't remove the human elements that's an all important aspect of the process, which we should remember. Careers are personal. And because they're personal to you, trust is important. So relationships with the organization, the ability to talk to someone, as Cecilia inferred on, that kind of resembles you, maybe, that you can see that path, is important. So organizations need to be doing more in that sense. They should be coming out a little bit further with some of these aspects to focus on this talent gap that you're referring to at this point, Mario.
We've touched so many interesting topics, but there's one that I'm going to try and focus now, which was we mentioned mentoring and sponsoring internally to try and fill the IT talent gap. Is it any way we can improve upon this? Because like you said, like Cecilia said, actually, we see someone who has achieved it and say, now, if they have done it, there's no reason why I wouldn't be able to do it. Would you give any advice on how we could improve this? I mean, I know it's hard because recruitment is usually bringing from the outside to the inside, right?
Yes, but I mean, recruiter's job is to do that, but functions are set up internally within organizations, that are in charge or concerned with the focus of the welfare of their staff, and internal mobility is a huge piece of it, particularly during the pandemic. A lot of organizations are unable to reach out externally because of budgetary reasons. They've made furlough cuts, etc. There's a lot of moral reasons why they shouldn't be hiring externally to fill in gaps when they've had this part of their teams decimated. But equally, when they have skill gaps, they need to be investing into better process for that internal mobility piece as well. But just because you want to move someone from one team to another doesn't mean you can. So it's all about that piece that I spoke about. Pipelining can be also seen as internalizing and going, right, what's our skills matrix look like? What's that mapping look like? So if we do want to move, a man Wong from team A to team B, and team A to team B has this skill gap, are we able to do that in what time frame, and how are we going to allow them to do that through either, you say, sponsoring them or enabling them to have access to resources, groups, courses, or the mentoring to enable you to do that. Particularly, let's be clear, the one big thing that we always find isn't necessarily the skills matching, it's the cultural aspects that is very difficult to tangibly measure. But if that individual is already in your organization, understands the IP and the culture of the business, has those internal relationships, we should be focusing our time on that and investing in them in a way so that they do learn and grow. Otherwise, what you're doing is you're growing them effectively for someone else, because they'll just leave and want to learn elsewhere. So there are all these things that we need to think about that motivates and galvanizes the employee to ensure that they stay and provide them the right value propositions in order to do so.
Cecilia, any thoughts on this?
No, I mean, I absolutely agree. I think that we need more strong sponsorship of individuals. I think that can come through pipeline efforts, where if you're really nurturing a pipeline of talent and identifying that talent within the organization and identifying future potential career opportunities for them within that organization, and understanding and helping them to address those gaps that can keep them from achieving those positions. I mean, that's a way of active pipelining and active sponsorship where you're preparing those individuals. So it's not about being a token. It's not about fulfilling quotas, but it's actually making sure that the right people within the organization are being prepared for the right opportunities, which ultimately helps that organization. I think that that's so key and so important. So it's really helping to identify what those career paths are and helping people to be successful in them.
Okay. I would like to shift gears, and I would like to get both of your opinion. You reckon that with all the events related with the pandemic and the change in the way we do our work, working from home, will it help it to balance the gender equality / diversity and inclusion a bit more?
Okay. In the interest of balance, I guess, Cecilia, would you like to go first? I should have certainly asked anyhow.
I think initially people think, oh, well, yes, this will help people because, more women can work from home and women are, the caretakers. And I think that's a very one-dimensional way of looking at things, because I think when you look overall just as people, not everybody is going to be in a position where they necessarily have a role where they're going to be able to work from home. So when you look at just from a socioeconomic perspective, not everybody, and just different demographics, not everybody is going to have a role where they can work from home, particularly people from diverse backgrounds. I think that also not everybody's going to have an employer, unfortunately, that's going to look positively at somebody working from home. So I think that's another thing that needs to be considered. So I think that the narrow view of, oh, this will help people because most women will be working from home, but I think you need to look on a broader range of just what we mean by diversity, and definitely that includes from a socioeconomic perspective, from an ethnic background perspective, and I think that definitely the pandemic has shown a light on various inequalities, but I don't think that working from home and is definitely going to be something that everybody is going to be able to benefit from.
Yeah, I think you've hit some real home truths there, Cecilia. I think a broader sense about the balance of equality for the gender conversation, it really depends on who you ask, of course, and their specific personalized circumstances, especially when you need to allocate cultural appreciation. The expectations of gender in certain cultures is slightly different as well. But in a general sense, I mean, I'd read a study from the UN that warned the pandemic really could dilute decades of advancement on gender equality. And obviously that sounds quite harrowing. But general consensus is, and I know why they're getting this from, is that women are overrepresented in real insecure hourly employment roles that are in sectors that are really been hit and by the pandemic. I'm talking things like hospitality, obviously retail, tourism, all that good stuff. Female workers have therefore consequently lost a lot of their jobs or been furloughed at a higher rate than men, in these studies. I'd seen something from the Institute of Fiscal Studies. The women in the UK, the women were 23% more likely to have lost their jobs permanently or temporarily due to the pandemic over men. So there are all these things that are highlighting the imbalance caused by the pandemic. And then when you actually look at the roles that these individuals have, if they're not affected by losing their jobs temporarily or being furloughed, Boston Consulting Group did a survey in the US where they spoke in Europe, and they spoke to 3,000 different people and found that in a given week, a further 15 hours was appropriated to non-paid work from women, about household childcare and home care and all that sort of stuff. So I think all of these things have a profound impact on the ability of this established dual earning couple, and that is eroding that piece away. And this is obviously more prevalent in certain industries and situations where the man is working from home or is perhaps earning a little bit more money, and the primary care is then defaulted to the person that you're most likely to able to go, okay, we can sacrifice this individual, and sadly it happens to be women. And so, you know, there is a clear imbalance caused by the pandemic on gender piece. You know, these are obviously generous populist perspectives, but these are trends that are certainly, for me, concerning in the gender balance conversation. However, I've got to say, I'm kind of quietly or bizarrely optimistic in some ways. You know, I can only speak from a personal level. You know, I like to think that with both, you know, the man and woman being at home, actually, perhaps a more gender balanced approach can be built for or established for child and home care solutions. You know, it's like paternity leave, right? You know, with that involved experience, and your perspective can change, and you understand your responsibility more, and the importance of partnership and collaboration, of the shared accountability, right, that you have for the family. So I'm clinging to that hope, Mario.
Well, what both of you just told me, it's definitely an eye-opener, but I never thought about from that perspective. With a possible vaccine coming, do you think that it will revert then to the older days? And what could that imply for equality among people?
I mean, I obviously hope we don't default back. And that's obviously a very broad statement, and one, if we have time, I can get into. But humans are simple beings, right? We resort to what we know with familiarity, comfortness, and all that sort of stuff. People don't like change, as is often quoted as a statement. However, I always ask myself, how can we actually revert? You know, if you think about it, every business sector, every industry, every business, every employee is impacted by what we've just experienced in the last 10 months. So whatever happens with the success of the vaccine, things, you know, logically speaking, won't really be the same again. And I would add, in some cases, it should not revert to the same again. You know, this pandemic, as Cecilia's already highlighted, has been incredible, highlighting inequality. You can literally map it, you know, the haves and haves not. You know, we remarked upon the gender imbalance already, and it's duly noted about the effects that the pandemic has also had on the ethnic minorities and ethnic communities, etc., disability communities. And I saw even this morning about the vaccine, one of the headlines read, you know, the richer countries are going to get access to it quicker before the poorer countries. So even on the vaccine level, you're seeing inequality. And personally, I think, you know, we may reach one of the most important factors when we want to see change. And I often talk about this, and it's critical mass. You know, the experience is such a shared one that all three of us on this call have got that one connection, that real shared experience. I'm sure we have others, right? And other things like that. But every individual that you speak to throughout the course of today, this week, etc., will also have the shared experience. And because of that, I'm in hope that changes us as people, that we have different expectations now about what we should be doing as individuals and our contribution to society, and then our expectations in turn of organizations, you know, and what organizations should be doing to have a better, more positive impact due to the remnants of the impact of the pandemic. You know, if you're a leader and you call yourself that, then I feel that you should feel that you've got almost a calling. And if you're not answering that calling now, during these times that we're experiencing, what are you waiting for? You know, so I think, and I hope that people sit down and kind of digest and reflect on what's actually happened there, and not allow us to default back to, you know, the commoditization of its people in work, and, you know, expectations of this and all that good stuff. And we should be thinking more actually human-centric organizations, human-centric behavior, about not just the bottom line, but how do we do more for everybody else in our wider communities and all that good stuff. That's what this pandemic should leave. It's a massive own goal, in my opinion, if we allow things to revert back to normal without a second thought of actually what's actually happened, you know.
I can see your point of view. That it's like you said, we can only be hopeful at this point.
Indeed, yeah.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I think for some people, yes, they will revert back to old ways. But I think that for many, no, because, you know, as Man said, life has just changed so much for so many people during this pandemic. I think that in particular, when we were going through lockdown, there was this moment of stillness that we had that we've never had within our lifetimes, where we sat down We were inside. We were looking at our TV screens. We saw so much that we'd never seen before, or that we just never really paid attention to before. I think that going through this experience of not having the day-to-day distractions and really having us look at ourselves and look at our relationships with people, or look at our relationships just with just the broader world, it really helped us to hopefully focus on what's important, what's not important, have a greater appreciation for things that we didn't previously. So I think that, and I think that that definitely gets into, our work and our lives, and what we will accept, what we won't accept. And no matter what the actual situation is, recognizing that we have the power to decide the path that we want to take. So if you are in a situation where, whether it be your work environment or even your personal environment, where you're not being treated with respect, where you're not appreciated, I would say, if respect isn't being served at the table, it's time to get up and leave. So, someone not treating you right is your validation to walk away. And I think it's just about being grateful for that revelation. I think that what this pandemic, this experience that we've had this year has been that revelation in many ways for many people. So be grateful for it. Recognize it, and now's the opportunity to decide, okay, what do I want to do going forward? Where do I want to be? What type of environment is going to be nurturing for me, welcoming of me? I think that's where many people are right now. So I think that going forward, it's going to be what people are ultimately going to be deciding for themselves in terms of what they want, in terms of equality and diversity and the types of environments that they want to be in.
Shifting gears again, then. So, Cecilia, on hopes of starting an open forum here, what are your thoughts on a platform like Candidate X?
No, I think platforms like Candidate X are great, because it gets back to what I was saying previously about we need to have more senses of community. We need to hear people's stories. We need to understand people's journeys. So I think that it's important for people to have platforms like Candidate X, because then I think when you hear people's stories, when you are part of a broader community, it helps you to understand, what are my options? And ultimately having a sense of accountability for yourself in terms of exploring those options, and going in the route that you want to go within your career. But I think it really starts with people having a sense of community, hearing other people's stories, seeing the different role models and sort of examples where it resonates with them in terms of people's backgrounds or stories, and ultimately understanding, wow, that's a possibility for me. Okay, these are the resources available for me. Okay, this is the direction that I'm going to go in.
That's good. And now, just to start closing on our final thoughts, from a perspective of diversity and inclusion, you think that the next generation are better equipped to handle any issues that might arise from this topic?
Just before I answer that, Cecilia, I'd like to invite you to become our spokesperson for us. That'd be nice if you don't mind.
Gotta love this.
Absolutely, yeah, Yeah, Mario. Okay, are they better equipped? That's interesting. Okay, all right. Let me start with this. I suppose the whole point of CanNext when we started, Sunil, John, and I, my other co-founders, was we wanted to do it for our kids. We've both got 2 kids, daughters and sons, and our real goal was to try and create something with such impact that platforms like Candidate shouldn't be needed, because equality should never be questioned. It's just established and expected. But I realized that we're a little bit away from that. you only need to go online to see how polarized people can be about certain things, you know, from masks, vaccines to taking a knee and all that sort of stuff. So you know, we're as a society, we're not quite ready yet. But I believe, and I've got optimistic hopes for our generation, rather the Gen Z, and whatever we call the generation that my kids will be in. You know, Scarlett, my daughter's only 5 at the moment. My son's only 2. So I don't know what we'll call it, generation, whatever. But just looking at all the social justice conversations, who is participating, who it affects, I think given the low turnout rate that we had, for instance, during the referendum, there's only 36% turnout rate for the demographic group between 18 and 25. I think a lot of people have been awoken to the cadence of what they should be doing and what a cadence can do and the impact it can do. You know, social media is empowering them to have the voice against what is wrong, you know, and I've seen so many videos where kids are challenging their own parents around the topic of racism. They're ready to have these important discussions. They're ready to unravel and dig into these uncomfortable truths. And that platform for that voice is so key and important. And that expectation then in turn, you know, affects what they want from their parents, what they want from their friends, and certainly what they want from their employees. So, you know, for instance, I've seen so many joint studies from Ivy League schools and Oxbridge where they look at MBA students and they talk about job criteria and things like that, and traditional orthodox criteria aspects such as location, money, job title even, they're taking a back seat now to actually what does a company want to do? What's its purpose? What's its mission? What's its social impact? And does it reflect what I want to do in my participation within the community? And those things are a real positive light at the end of this tunnel where you can look at it and go, right, that's great. Because if the next generation of individuals, and I'm obviously not everybody feels this way, but from what I've seen in terms of certain studies, it fills me with some positivity to go, that's what we need to tap into, because that mindset is not just about the individual anymore. It's about us as a collective and their roles and responsibilities as a citizen to what we can do and contribute. So, you know, I do hope, to answer your question, that these conversations are happening more and more, and the earlier it happens, the better, you know, to tackle these sensitive issues so that children grow up not knowing you know, people often say the best way to talk about get rid of racism is not talk about it. We aren't ready to do that yet. But if you are able to establish it in such a way with your children or that generation that's coming up where race isn't something considered, then we can make those strides towards those things. But my generation at this stage, someone can flippantly go, well, we don't want to talk, you know, the more you talk about color, the more divided we are. Well, we need to talk about that at the moment because there are so many inequalities that are systemic that until we recognize and understand and appreciate, it won't change. So yeah, a lot of hope and optimism is placed on the younger generation, certainly from my point of view.
Cecilia, what about from your point of view?
Yeah, I mean, I do hope that the next generation is better equipped. Mainly from just having perhaps a stronger mindset in terms of dealing with a lot of these issues. And I think, you know, being able to see certain role models, you know, as I said before, there is great content where people can see examples of individuals that have had similar backgrounds, you know, that look like them, that are on similar journeys. When you see it, you believe it. I think that that's so important. I even get inspired when I'm looking across at different platforms and seeing individuals that are female, that are Black, that you know, come from similar backgrounds as me, you know, really doing their thing and on their journey. I think it just inspires me and it keeps me going. I think that, look, there is going to be ignorance and unconscious bias. You know, you're going to have to deal with, you know, hearing tone deaf conversations. You're going to be in the workplace and dealing with microaggressions, you know, whatever you want to call it. It is going to be there, but it's having that mindset that is just so key and so important. It's really about how you react to it, because that's your power and that's how you control. You can control that. I always get the question in every talk I do, in every in every panel, whatever, you know, as a Black woman, have you ever felt that you've been negatively impacted by racism in the workplace, or, you know, some variation of that question? And my response is always the same. The answer is always no. Not to say that I haven't had to deal with those situations, but it's more about the mindset. I have never let it negatively impact me. I've never let it change how I want to pursue my career, how I deal with day-to-day problems, let it emotionally get to me. So the reality is that yes, you are going to go through these difficult times, but it's having that strong mindset. And I think that because we have so many great examples of role models out there, because we are having more open dialogues now, I think that the next generation is going to be better prepared and better equipped to have that stronger mindset when they do encounter issues such as this.
I think on that as well, Cecilia, it's, you talk about the mindset piece. I think, not everybody obviously has that strength, right? And can mobilize themselves in the way that you've obviously been able to do so. And that, I think that highlights the keenness and importance of, as you say, role models, or that mentorship aspect, where they can refer certain experiences where they're struggling with these things and understand how you deal with them in a way so they can build that resilience and that stronger mindset piece.
Yes, definitely.
That was really interesting. Thank you very much. But with that, we have to wrap up this episode. Thank you very much, Cecilia and Man, for joining us and taking time off your schedule to participate in the podcast. And thank you for listening, and hope you can join us on our next episode of High Tech Low Code Podcast, where we'll feature another guest and approach yet another topic of extreme importance to the tech world. And on that note, we say our goodbyes.
Thank you, Mario. See you soon.
Yeah, thanks, Mario. Bye.
See you soon.